So first of all, for all the audience that has joined us already, I would like to welcome you, everybody, to the webinar that is about the Marie Curie Action Individual Fellowships. Well, it's my very big pleasure to introduce this activity that has been organized between the Spanish Association of Spanish Researchers Association in Australia and Pacific, the SRAP, and Euraxess. Well, I am Joaquin Valderrama. I am the president of SRAP. And basically, well, just to clarify, in SRAP, what we do is, so we are an association of Spanish researchers living in Australia. We have presence in Sydney, in Brisbane, and in Melbourne, and in Canberra. And basically what we do is to disseminate the science that we do and facilitate collaboration opportunities, mostly to create bridges between the Spanish and the Australian societies. So this means that if you are a Spanish researcher, you're most welcome to join our community. And of course, if you're interested in following our activities, you can access our website that is there on the slide, and stay tuned to the things we do. Tonight we have the pleasure to have two special guests, or two speakers. They are Mr. Nishant Shandilya, who is the Euraxess representative in Australia and New Zealand, and Dr. Nancy Couling, an associate professor at Bergen School of Architecture. So I'm sure with them we're going to learn a lot about the Marie Curie individual fellowships. And before passing the podium to Nishant, I would like to advise that, advise that you all keep your microphone mute and your videos off. And of course, if you have any question, please use the chat option of Zoom. So that will be through there. We will see your questions. So now I can pass the podium to Mr. Nishant, and thank you all for coming.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Joaquin. Now let me first share my screen so that we can then smoothly move on. Can you see my screen now?
We do. We can.
Perfect. Let me just hide the panel. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to those who have joined us from Europe and other parts of the world. I'm Nishant Shandilya. I'm the regional representative for Euraxess Australia and New Zealand. Thank you very much, Joaquin. It's a very good initiative that we are trying to bring together this understanding of postdoc research opportunities in Europe with the Marie Curie Individual Fellowship. So of course, first and foremost, what we are trying to understand is what are the Marie Sklodowska-Curie Individual Fellowship. By MSCA, what does MSCA stand for? So if you look at the first letters, Marie Sklodowska-Curie Actions is an acronym for MSCA. So it's simply what it gives us is, it's a name that was given from the Polish-born French pioneer in radioactivity, Marie Curie, and who lent her name to this particular program under the European framework called Horizon 2020. You might have heard of Horizon 2020 a lot. It's the largest research and innovation program in the world, with an approximate budget of around 80 billion euros for the period of 2014 till 2020. So of course, inside Horizon 2020, there are several programs which are there to help research and scientific collaboration and all those stuff. A specific thing is the Marie Curie Action, and inside Marie Curie Action, there is this individual fellowship, which is particularly aimed at helping researchers in mobility, helping researchers in improving their own collaborative approach towards how they can participate in postdoctoral research. So once we understand Marie Curie Individual Fellowship is for those researchers who are willing to participate in their postdoctoral learning, we need to understand what are the call dates before we go into much details. So the first thing that we understand is it's an annual call for proposal. So every year there is a call for proposal that is released. This year it was released on 8th of April and it's closing on 9th of September. So if you look at the time period, it's almost around 5 months time. However, what we need to be very careful is it's not a very large amount of time, because as Nancy, our MSCA fellow, will let you know, it's never too early to start, to be honest, because you need to take into consideration a lot of aspects. So it's always good to start early. So in terms of individual fellowship, this is a personal postdoctoral fellowship. What do we mean by personal postdoctoral fellowship? It means that a researcher, an individual researcher, applies themselves. It's not through an institution that they apply. It's a fully funded fellowship which ranges from 1 to 2 years, and the hosts can be academic institutions or non-academic institutions. We'll have a look at what academic and non-academic means later on. What it brands itself, individual fellowship is a comprehensive career development tool. By comprehensive career development tool, it means it not just allows you to express your scientific ideas, but it also allows you to grow throughout as a career. For instance, if you are trying to manage teams, if you are helping yourself to understand how to budget a certain thing, you need to participate in several events. How do you enhance your skill? That is what it teaches you throughout the process. So of course, what immediate comes to mind is what research topics are funded. And the good news is it's open to all domains of research. And the idea is it's a bottom-up principle. What do you mean by bottom-up principle? It means that a researcher is free to choose whatever they want to, whatever research they want to do. It's not guided by someone on the top. Whatever you feel like researching, you need to justify why you think a research need to be done in that area. What all expertise are you going to bring in, right? So of course, as I mentioned at the very beginning, who can apply for a MSCA? It's open to all nationalities, open to all academic disciplines, and there is no age or experience limit. Of course, if we go much into detail, we'll look at different panels that there are, but for a starter, for the generic information, what you need to understand is whatever your nationality is, whatever your interest in terms of research area is, you are more than welcome to participate in these individual fellowships. Having said all this, there are certain eligibility criteria that you need to fulfill. Of course, in terms of qualification, the first criteria is you need to be an experienced researcher, ER. What does that mean? You need to have a PhD or at least 4 years of research experience at the relevant deadline for submission of proposal. So of course, there would be some questions is, what do you mean by experienced researcher? So I'll try to summarize it by saying that it's those time you have spent conducting research in a full-time position after completion of your university degree that allows you to pursue a PhD. In many countries, this is a master's degree. However, depending on some of the countries' education structure, it also is a bachelor's degree. So you need to understand that you must be able to document how you have carried out your research, which could be in terms of employment contract, lab results, or research output. So that is one of the main criteria that you need to have 4 years of research experience. The second important criteria is mobility. So for European fellowship, wherein we are looking at people who are trying to move from a third country to Europe or associated country or within Europe, what they need to do is a mobility rule applies. They need to move to Europe, and the mobility rule is for the last 3 years, you cannot have had spent more than 1 year in the country that you will be hosted in. So for instance, if you are an Australian citizen and if you are trying to apply to go to Portugal, for instance, and your host institution is in Lisbon. However, if you have spent 18 months in Portugal in the past 3 years, you cannot apply to go to Portugal as your host country. So that is something you need to be very careful with. This is the second eligibility criteria, which is termed as mobility. So in terms of understanding where you can go for this European fellowship, there are essentially 43 possibilities. You can go to the 27 EU member states, or to the 16 associated countries. So of course, I'll also try to explain how you can understand how to apply for these, where you can find information later on in the presentation. The automatic question that I see is, can I apply with an institution in the UK? And the answer is yes. Until 2020, which is within the Horizon 2020 framework, UK institutions are still eligible to host fellows for the European Fellowship. Okay, now what else is unique about the individual fellowship? It's a very important thing to keep in mind that it's a joint effort. At times what happens is when applicants start writing their proposal, they think that they can write the proposal and then later on get in touch with their host or their supervisor. However, what what the Marie Curie encourages is you need to get in touch with your host or supervisor and try to come up with a joint plan, try to come up with an idea both of you share, and try to understand what benefits can both of you attain and what all expertise both of you can bring into this particular proposal. Of course, we'll discuss later on how you are going to find the host. But what type of host institutions can you choose? First, we need to understand there are 3 types of hosts. Of course, those can be categorized into 2 broad categories, the academic hosts and the non-academic hosts. Academic hosts include universities and research institutions, and the non-academics include private companies. So of course, if these are some of the possibilities, if you see that these are doing research in your area, who are doing quite a good work and you feel you can be part of their team, you should look at these type of hosts organization. You'll see later on where you can find these host organizations. An interesting thing about Marie Curie Individual Fellowship is also secondment possibilities. Of course, you are going to be hosted in a country, but there is a possibility that you can do secondments of 3 to 6 months in a separate institution where the Marie Curie encourages researchers to have intersectoral mobility. So of course, if you are in a university, they advise that if you find secondment opportunities, it should be in an industry or with a company that is doing research in your area. So of course, there is this possibility of having secondments and the opportunity to link with industry, NGOs, or other certain type of public sector or national organizations. So this is in terms of secondment. Now we move on to, of course, the evaluation criteria, what you need to consider when you are writing this proposal. The basic thing that you need to understand, if you look at the structure, there is the 3 important parts: excellence, impact, and implementation. With any Horizon 2020, if you are aware of how Horizon 2020 works, all the proposals need to have these 3 sections. But what is interesting about Marie Curie is the excellence, impact, and implementation is just 10 pages. You need to finish your proposal by 10 pages. So when you submit your proposal, what happens is it gets converted to a PDF file. So anything that is on page 11 is not seen by the evaluator. So you need to be very careful. Of course, I'm sure Nancy will elaborate in some of the tips and advices on how you can write a compelling proposal. But what you need to understand is excellence counts for 50% of the weight, impact counts for 30%, implementation counts for 10%. Your intention should be to reach at least 90%, because from the past, what we have seen is 85 onwards and 90 onwards is where you have a possibility of getting funded. Of course, then there are other stuffs like researchers' CVs, capacities of the host tables, ethics issues, letter of commitment, which are also to be included. However, the main proposal is excellence, impact, and implementation. So what goes inside each of these sections? So of course, as I mentioned, 50% weight goes to the excellence section, wherein you try to sell what is the quality or innovative aspect of your research idea. How do you clearly sell, or how do you clearly tell the quality of the transfer of knowledge or training that is going to happen? Or what is the quality of the supervision and the capacity of the researcher? This is on the excellence part. On the impact part is where you try to what are your measures for communication and result dissemination? Of course, you look at the research and innovation related aspect of human resources and skills and all those in the impact section. The last part of the proposal is on implementation, and here you try to tell how you are going to implement whatever you have planned. What are the resources that you will be using? What are the management structure, procedures? What are the appropriate institutional environment and the associated risk and infrastructures that you will be availing, and those type of stuff. Of course, at the moment, what you need to understand is you should not be worried about this because you'll see that we will be bringing to you a much detailed webinar on June 4th, wherein we will give you a breakdown of this guide on how you are going to apply for it and how you can write these proposals, right? So, of course, after we understand what are the components of the individual fellowship proposal, you need to also understand what is funded by the individual fellowship. So, just to give you a very brief background, we have categorized it into two parts: costs of researchers per month and institutional costs per month. Of course, the individual fellowship are 100% funded. So this is an indication of how the living allowances, mobility allowances, and family allowances are there. A fellow's salary includes living allowance, mobility allowance, and if there is a family obligation, the family allowance. On the other hand, of course, you need to understand that these are gross numbers, and whatever host country you will be subjected to that country's taxation. So these are an approximate number that you can avail. Of course, there are these country denominators that will slightly change the numbers, but it's an approximate number. In terms of institutional cost, this is something that goes to the host institutions, wherein they will be getting certain amount of money for research training and networking costs. For instance, if you need to participate in certain events, or if you are trying to go for secondment and the travel belonging to that, these type of things will be covered by those costs. And then there, of course, there are management and indirect costs, which also goes to the institutional actors. So this is to give you just an indication of what all numbers you are going to be eligible for should you receive an individual fellowship. So of course, when we give these webinars, we generally get this question: what is the success rate? How successful are people in getting these fellowships? So not to go into much detail here, because this is according to panel, which I do not want to confuse you with. The bottom line at the moment is by the 2018 results, there is this 13.96% of possibilities that any proposal gets funded. But you should not be scared by looking at this number, because the idea is to, of course, put forward a number, put forward a proposal that you feel like is going to represent what you have in your idea or in your concept. Once you, of course, put through this proposal, you can, of course, resubmit if you do not get funded in the first time. But this is just to give you an indication that it's around 14%. Okay, now we'll move on to the outcome. When will you hear about the outcome once you submit your proposal? In terms of the timeline, as I mentioned, it was open on 8th of April, and the deadline is 9th of September. The intended evaluation month is October and November. The idea is to inform the applicants by 21 February, and a possible first start date is May 2021. But of course, because Marie Curie is quite flexible in terms of start date, there is a possibility to start until September 2022 once you have been accepted to receive the individual fellowship. Now, we give a very slight glance on how do I get started. How do you get started? The first step is finding the call for application. So the idea is you need to go and look at what proposal has to be submitted online. via the Horizon 2020 participant portal. Of course, to simplify, we call it participant portal. There are other names that we use, but to understand, we have given you the link wherein you can look and find where you are going to submit the online version. To find the call, you have to specifically type MSCA IF as the keyword, and it will take you there. Having said that, we have actually developed a step-by-step guide on how to submit an individual fellowship proposal. It's a tutorial. So once you receive this presentation, I'm sure you are going to receive it. Joaquin will submit and share it with all of you. You can just click on that and have a look at the step-by-step guide wherein we tell you how you are going to make the submission. Of course, I have also generated a QR code for the IF call so that you can easily access what the call exactly looked like. But two things that we generally share with all the participants of a webinar is you need to look at Guide for Applicants and the MSCA work program. These are two very important documents that anyone who is trying to apply for this type of funding has to read. This is like constitution that you need to understand each and every aspect and what is being evaluated, what is being favorably looked at. Of course, what you need to understand is if there is something on the proposal, which, for instance, if there is an ethics point on the proposal and you feel that there is no ethics related component in your research, you need to write there is no ethics related component. If you leave it blank, you are going to not receive any point for that. So of course, these are some of the nitty-gritty things that you will understand once you read the Guide for Applicant more thoroughly. Of course, then you need to also understand starting point is that, but you need to have a research idea to put forward a proposal, right? I'm sure all of you have a research idea. If you do not have a research idea on top of your head, it's a very good idea to discuss with your peers, with your colleagues, with your current supervisor who can help you, and you can, of course, fine tune or you can refine your ideas as you start interacting with people in your research network. Step 3 is finding a host. This is very important. How do you find a host? Of course, these are the sort of things that we always say. Personal contact is by far the most important one because it's in general in life, personal contact is something that works the best. Of course, you might have met someone in an event or somewhere. If your supervisor knows somebody, this is how you approach. If you do not have personal contacts and if, of course, the Congress attendance and those type of things at the moment is not happening, what we suggest at the moment is there are two particular ways to get a host. One is on the Euraxess portal, another is on the Net for Mobility Plus portal. How do you find a host on the Euraxess portal? Of course, this is something that I will elaborate maybe a little more towards the end of my presentation, but just to indicate, on the Euraxess portal, inside the jobs and funding, there is a tab that helps you find hosting. Currently, there are more than 300 hosting offers. So there are institutions, universities, research organizations who are willing to host Marie Curie individual fellowship applicants. So of course, you can find them there, or you can look at the Net for Mobility platform. Of course, there are a lot of expression of interest by European countries or European research institutions on that very specific platform. Net for Mobility is a very, very good network of NCPs, National Contact Point, who specialize on Marie Curie actions. So of course, those are the two main points where you can find hosting offers, right? So where do I find more information? So just to reiterate, the Marie Curie website has a lot of information for you. The participant portal has a lot of information for you. There is one very interesting thing that I'd like to highlight here. The read this section. You need to look at this section because our friends in Luxembourg have taken the extra effort to look at the past Marie Curie individual fellowship proposals and their evaluation feedback. And they have put in together a document wherein they suggest what has worked, what has not worked, what type of things the evaluators have commented on, what are things they considered is very good. So this will give you an idea of what you can expect in terms of being evaluated, right? So of course, to let you know, when you put forward a proposal, even if you are becoming successful or unsuccessful, you will receive feedback from the evaluators. Now, you might have heard the Euraxess portal and Euraxess. Just to clarify, what is Euraxess? It's a pan-European initiative backed by the European Research Area. By European Research Area, it's the EU member states that you might have seen the 20. So this is an initiative backed by the European Research Area with the intention to support researcher mobility and career development. Of course, the overarching aim is to enhance scientific collaboration between Europe and the rest of the world. Every service that Euraxess provides is free of charge. But to understand what Euraxess provides, you need to understand there are 4 pillars. How is it important for researchers to understand Euraxess? The first pillar, as you might remember, under the hosting offers is the jobs and funding. So if you are looking for jobs, if you want to understand what is there are currently 14,211 research job positions available on the Euraxess portal. And then there are 519 funding opportunities. On the bottom, you might see that there is something called search for hosting. This is where when you click, you will get a list of the hosting offers that there are currently for you to explore. This is the first pillar. The second pillar of Euraxess is information and assistance. So of course, if you are trying to go to a certain country, if you think that, for instance, Italy is your next destination for your individual fellowship, you can go at the specific national portal of Euraxess and try to see what specific country information, what practical advice are there for any researcher with regards to career development, job and funding, or professional opportunities. Then within that, there are 600 Euraxess support centers. So what are these support centers? These are support centers which provide free of charge information to the researchers in terms of how they are going to stay abroad, what all information do they need in terms of that specific country. So it's very possible that in a specific country, there are several support centers, and you can approach them if you want to get any advice in terms of, for instance, visa, how do you want to avail accommodation and stuff like that. These are all free services that is there. The third pillar is partnering. So of course, as I mentioned, there are at the moment 93,548 registered members and 17,186 registered organizations and universities. So when you become a member, which is free to become, you get to choose what type of organizations are there, and you get to interact with them, you get to get in touch with them. And of course, likewise for the universities or research institutions, for them to be on the Euraxess portal is to find what type of people are there, what type of talent is there, and to approach them to be part of their team. The last pillar is Euraxess Worldwide. So Euraxess Worldwide is the international arm of Euraxess. So you can see that there are 8 Euraxess hubs throughout the globe: US and Canada, Latin America and Caribbean, India, China, Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asia. The most nascent one is Australia and New Zealand. That is where we have come in. Starting January of 2020, Euraxess Australia and New Zealand came into being. So of course, once you receive this slide, you can just click on the image and it will take you to the portal for Euraxess Australia and New Zealand. So what do we provide here? You can see that we provide news and event opportunities, career and funding. You have publications, which is helpful for all the researchers, and there are other useful information that you can avail. Of course, what is critical is you need to sign up to become a member, but the sign up process is very, very short and it's free. So you just get access to a lot of information that is already there. Of course, we are on LinkedIn, we are on Facebook, and you can get in touch with us. Our modus operandi was organizing physical events, but due to this COVID-induced scenario, of course, we now need to move into the webinar or the information sessions. And what are future activities that we have planned? We have already done the Marie Curie Individual Fellowship Edition 1 on April 30. This is the second edition, which is we are doing in collaboration with SRAP. Of course, what is critical for you to know is we are going to do a webinar on application advice on June 4th. This is specifically on European fellowship. So anyone who is willing to put forward a proposal, I suggest you should attend this, because we are going to bring two very good experts who will take you through the process of applying for the individual fellowship. Then of course, down the line, we are trying to organize several other webinars, like how to do a PhD in Europe, Frontier Science in Europe PRC grant, Euraxess career development tools, how to get published in natural science, how to get published in social science and humanities, how to do a postdoc in Europe, and intersectoral mobility, moving from academia to industry. I guess I spoke a lot, and of course, Nancy will be able to give you more practical advice from her own experience of being a Marie Curie Fellow. But if you have any questions, of course, feel free to write it down on the chat. If not, please feel free to send me an email on my email address. I cannot reiterate much that you should sign up for becoming a member, because it's free, and any service that Euraxess provides is free of charge. We are on Facebook and on LinkedIn. Just type in Euraxess Australia and New Zealand and you will reach us. What we do generally on weekdays, we post once a day to provide you information regarding if there are vacancies, research vacancies, if there are funding opportunities, if there are any European research area related policy updates, or anything that might be of interest to researchers. So yes, thank you very much for joining in and listening to me. And I look forward to your questions and queries. I think that is it from my side. Joaquin, I pass it on to you now.
All right, thank you very much, Nishant. This was very, very interesting information, and I think we have all learned a lot about how to apply and many interesting questions. Do you want to check if there are any questions now, or perhaps at the end?
Yeah, I think we should wait till the end, because a lot of the things that I mentioned will be complemented by things that Nancy will also include in her presentation. So I think the attendees will have a better idea by the time she has presented.
Absolutely. So if that's the case, probably we can, give the word to Nancy, and I guess she's going to tell us, more details and more clues about how to write a compelling proposal. So please, Nancy.
Is it possible to give her the co-hosting rights, Joaquin?
Say it again.
Is it possible to give Nancy the co-hosting rights?
Yeah, absolutely. No.
Because then I will share my screen.
Leave it there. Thanks.
Okay. Just a question. Do you see, I'll make it full screen. Okay, is that looking good? Thanks very much for the invitation to speak to you this morning. It's a great pleasure to discuss a little bit the experience of the Marie Curie Individual Fellowship. I can highly recommend it, obviously. This is what they asked me to talk about, why I applied and how I did it. It's only 10 minutes, my talk, so there's not much detail, but perhaps it's better to ask questions afterwards. down below here, you can see what I'm going to talk about. I'll give you a little bit of background, then you might understand why I applied for it. A few principles that I think are very important when you're thinking about this application, and then a few practical tips. So my name is Nancy Couling. I'm a doctor, I'm an architect. And just to give you a brief kind of introduction to what my project was about, the acronym was Ocean Urb. It was about urbanization in the space of the ocean with a case study on the North Sea. And when my application was successful, the European Commission advertised my application like this: from New Zealand to the Netherlands. So it has a kind of a ring to it. I think they kind of like that. But in actual fact, I had been in Europe for quite a long time. So I was not a New Zealander sitting in New Zealand trying to put this application together. So I can understand that it's perhaps not so easy for you. However, this is a kind of an article that the TU Delft, the Technical University in Delft in the Netherlands, where I went to, wrote about me even before I started. So with the Marie Curie, you're already in a kind of there's a lot of people working around this project, promoting you. It has a wonderful network, and you can really make the most of that. So what is the background to this? I finished my doctorate here in Switzerland. I live in Switzerland in 2015. So just below here, you can see what I did before. I studied architecture at Auckland University in New Zealand a long time ago. And I had a lot of practice experience. And the reason I did a doctorate, I moved to Switzerland basically for family reasons from Berlin, where I spent a long time. I was teaching and also practicing with my own practice as an architect. And I moved to Switzerland, and I started doing this doctorate. It was something on my list. So this is a great moment. You know, there I am standing there with a bunch of flowers. This is my supervisor here with this red packet, which is the piece of paper, you know, with my doctorate inside. Everybody's there. Great moment. Ready for new things. And then I spent 1 year unemployed, looking for a job. I think this is not so, I think this happens quite a lot with postdocs, because especially in architecture, nobody wants to employ an academic in an office, really. Secondly, we're so specialized. I mean, in a doctorate, you have to find a very unique kind of topic and take it, investigate it to some depth. And it doesn't mean we're sort of employable, really. But however, this period of sort of unemployment meant that I made lots of research proposals, made lots of almost 100 applications of different kinds. This gave me the opportunity also to kind of test new research ideas. I started thinking about the North Sea, started reading and gathering facts. I also was able to familiarize myself with different funding possibilities or different programs, the advantages and disadvantages. And I could see that you know, there were certain advantages with the Marie Curie. And the last thing is that, exactly as Nishant was explaining, host universities, they are promoting the Marie Curie program, and they're actually actively looking for participants. So this was very encouraging, and this is just an application from an organization that were trying to recruit, actually, Marie Curie researchers.
Sorry, Nancy, just to interrupt, we are not able to see your slide move.
Am I still on the first slide for you? Okay.
Yes. They were suggesting to make it like full screen with Control L.
Yeah, it is full screen.
All right, so that means we are seeing your second screen or your first screen. So when sharing the screen, could you please perhaps check? Yes, that's probably the one we need to see.
Okay, sorry. What didn't you see? Did you only saw this or only this? Okay. Okay, so just quickly, that was my project from New Zealand to the Netherlands. This is receiving a doctorate at the EPFL. This is my teaching experience here. teaching and practice experience. And this was the page about, sometimes it doesn't move on. Okay, about the different kinds of applications and what I learned from that process. And I found that the answer in this case, with Marie Curie is perfect for this, is to make your own job. And Nishant mentioned this, it's a joint effort. I'm calling this the yin-yang. This is super important for the Marie Curie and probably not the same for many other types of proposals or research proposals. So it's about you and your research. On the one hand, it's just as important as your chosen institution. In terms of you and your research, it's about career development. So you need to do an evaluation of where you are. It's not about self-criticism, it's about kind of a realistic evaluation of what you would need to do to move forward in your career and in your research field. So what do you need to strengthen? Think about that. How would you expand your own field? If you had 2 years to work on whatever you like, where would you want to be at the end of this 2 years, and what would you have contributed to this field? So you have to show ambition, and they want to hear your midterm goals and then your long-term goals. So think about that. Long-term is perhaps after the Marie Curie application, but you will perhaps, the Marie Curie will take you to a mid-term goal. So you have to be able to articulate that. And, just for an example, for example, had not been supervising PhDs. I had not organized a kind of an international conference, really. Something smaller, which always helps. You have to mention this. It shows that you are capable. But there were a few points like this, and also successful funding, writing successful funding applications, and I had not published in a high-ranking journal. So something like this was kind of missing for me to move on. Then Nishant also mentioned this, very important is knowledge transfer. So about you, what can you bring to this university? The methods you have used, your current skills, some of the knowledge that you have acquired through a PhD or other experience. This is a crucial component. So I am advising you, moving now to the institution part of it, go straight to the top. You need to move up from where you are right now. I mean, my university that I completed my doctorate was down here somewhere. I mean, this Swiss university here is very high up, but you have to show that you're moving up. And the Delft University of Technology, where I carried out my Marie Curie, is number 3 university in the world for architecture. So think about that and be ambitious in that sense. But it also means you have to understand why, and you have to argue this. So I briefly explained before, my research was about the sea. This is my PhD title, so urbanization and the sea. So I was developing the argument that it was very difficult to carry out this research in Switzerland, which is a landlocked country. And I moved, my proposal was to move to the Netherlands. Europe's #1 port of Rotterdam is located there, plus my proposed case study was the North Sea. So I would be right in the midst, basically, of this kind of knowledge. And if you want to see how you would write something like that, I mean, you can't read all of this now, but firstly, an environment of research excellence, network opportunities to secure future project partners, because you have to say where you're going after this. And also this important point about Switzerland being landlocked, and that because of this, my topic does not currently correspond to Swiss federal research priorities. And then not only my field, but also, the Netherlands is a European hub of maritime transport and knowledge creation. So this is how it looks when you argue, but you have to understand why you've chosen that institution. So I want to say something else, that it's not only about your supervisor. So here, I had a wonderful supervisor. Here on the left, here she is, Professor Carola Hein, very respected in her field. But you also have to argue what other courses the university can can offer you. So you're gaining new knowledge. You have to expand. You have to develop new knowledge. What are the other experts at the university that you will have contact with? What are the networks and affiliations that the university already has? Because the application will ask you about integration, how you will integrate into this new context. Then there will be facilities and technologies in place that you may want to make use of that are not necessarily in the chair of your supervisor. And the two other important things, existing channels for dissemination and communication to a wider public audience. These are two different things. You have to be very aware of this and think about imaginative ways to communicate outside of an academic environment as well. And sometimes universities have, open days, or they have different liaisons and partnerships with the community or whatever. Use existing channels, because you haven't got time to set up new types of collaborations and so on, and you probably don't have time to even think about it when you're writing the application. So just be aware that your supervisor is one part, very important, and I agree with Nishant, try and make contact. It's probably the most difficult thing. They're far too busy. But remember that the university itself, plus collaborating universities, it's probably a whole series of institutions that can offer you something. So I'm just saying here, a top institution will have a set up to assist applicants like you. So this is another reason why you need to go to a really good university, because your supervisor is much too busy to look at the details of your application. There'll be other people that their job is to recruit Marie Curie applicants. So you can work with them and they will help you with certain parts of the application. Okay, one other point of the Marie Curie principles is innovation. And Nishant already said that excellence is 50%, but I didn't mention, but I'm also an evaluator now in the Marie Curie applications from all over the world. So I can see that you really have to show that your project, your idea is kind of, well, groundbreaking is maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but it's beyond the state of the art. So you have to explain the state of the art, and you have to explain what's missing is always the same, basically the research gap, and why your idea is innovative. And I also think, I mentioned this shortly, but don't forget about interdisciplinarity, because that's a great way to be innovative. So if you're putting two different things together, or you have a great background in one area and you're going to a university that can offer you something in a slightly different area, that's convincing, because you are moving out of your comfort zone, and you are working with the different people that will really teach you something, and you can teach them something. So interdisciplinarity is a great way to be innovative. Now, I don't know how much time I've got left now, but so a few practical tips. The wonderful thing about the Marie Curie program, I think, is that there is all this training and support. So what Nishant is, or what your hosts have been organizing here today is one example. I went to a course, and that's why I was asking before if there are courses offered at also in New Zealand. It was fantastic. It was like, I don't know, one day or a morning or something like this in Geneva that went through these elements of the course. There was somebody speaking there who had made a successful application. It just it demystifies the whole thing. It also shows you what to concentrate on. Also something about the Marie Curie kind of language, or the application language, and so on. So this is fantastic. Go to all the training sessions. There are things on the internet. People are giving advice. Use all the support and all the manuals available. Many other programs don't have such a structure in place, by the way. Okay, now I'm just going to go through 3 or 4 points about how to write your proposal. And number 1, thoroughness. So answer every aspect that they ask for you. It's all laid out there. Basically, you just have to go through and make sure you have answered what they want to know. They give you a lot of information. They're very clear. Everything counts. So, of course, excellence is 50%. But as an evaluator, I can tell you that if things are on the same, if 2 proposals are more or less the same score or whatever, the person who has made, for example, a convincing argument for gender or interdisciplinarity will move up a few points and will be a successful applicant where the other will not. So everything counts. I mean, Nishant already told you it's going to be, you have to be sort of 90%, and I wouldn't freak out about these numbers, because I've seen most unconvincing applications are incomplete, basically, or unbalanced in these areas. So if you are complete and you go through seriously and answer everything they want to give you, you have a great chance, seriously. And these kind of statistics, the other, 80% that do not get through have not made a complete application or taken it seriously or spent the time. Okay, and in this sense, gender and interdisciplinarity are also really important in the case. They could make the difference. Okay, somebody gave me this advice to be precise. So wherever you can, even though you don't have much space in this application, give names, dates, name the conferences you attend, name the journals you will publish in, the courses you will take at your host institution. Now this requires quite some research, to wheedle through the internet and find the programs and so on, but it's doing your homework. So the more you name specifics, the better your application comes across to the evaluator. And also, they are chosen from your field, basically. They are really well informed, so you can't fake it. The next thing is feasibility. Be realistic. You are, I'm using this term junior researcher in a wider sense. You have a PhD, but you're not expected to be an expert in your field yet. So you can be ambitious, but please try and be realistic for what you can do in the time frame at your level of expertise. Because if you claim you're going to do A, B, and C, and they will look in your CV and they'll say, oh, but she hasn't done anything like that ever before, or she hasn't made any effort, or there are no papers, there are no conferences in this direction, it's unrealistic. So also consider that there's potential difficulties in moving to Europe. There's a new language potentially. You're in a new language context. You may have to find this idea of interviewees or setting up equipment. This takes time, and you will have to address the idea of risk management in your proposal. So don't underestimate. Be clear about that. You don't need to pretend you're going to do incredible things. Think about how it can actually be achieved. So I just wanted to share something with you here. This was a very helpful feedback 3 days before the deadline. Somebody at the TU Delft sent this back to me. This is my application with kind of a series of comments, basically telling me the whole thing was totally unrealistic. I had planned to, you won't be able to read it, it's a little probably, but going into archives and researching the sea historically over 3 different historical periods. And this person luckily wrote to me and said, you're going into the archives, you don't speak you don't speak Dutch. This is all Dutch. You won't understand anything. How is this ever going to work in the time frame that you've given? Also, I wrote here somewhere that I was going to write funding proposals, and she wrote here, it could take months. This is not reflected in my time plan here. And then to narrow down the choice over here, narrow down the choice of periods. So get feedback if you can. It's not easy because people are far too busy. But this is really to show you to be realistic with what you plan to do in the time, and then to be clear. So don't overcomplicate the application. It's only, it's 13 pages, that first part, but then there's the title page, there's the second page. I think there are only really 10 pages in the end. I like to use diagrams because it helps clarify things for my own mind, and architects were kind of very visual. I'll show you some diagrams shortly in my last slides. And then please, if you're not a native English speaker, proofread the English. Maybe this is not such an issue for Australia, New Zealand, but we could have people listening here from any kind of place. So as an evaluator, applications that have not been proofread by somebody in English are just frustrating to read. The evaluators will lose patience. Your formulations are complicated, and they lead actually to real misunderstandings about what you're trying to achieve. So this is about clarity. And for example, here's my Gantt chart. And it's a very useful tool. I mean, in the end, it was much smaller in the application because you don't have much space, but it shows, for example, here on the bottom is public engagement as opposed to dissemination, which are these papers and things, milestones, how the different themes, the different phases are organized. And it makes it basically the evaluator should be able to look at this at a glance and think, oh yes, this is well thought out. And I made also a diagram for the training because I had this idea I wanted to show. Training through project was a very important area for me. And also there were so many different courses and different sort of components to the training that it was much easier to explain it in a diagram like this than writing out, you know, kind of a lot of words in my application. And one tip that somebody gave me too was I used the front page to give some visuals. I mean, if visuals are important or diagrams or anything in your application, to show, to give the evaluators an idea of what this could be. I wanted to show them that what I was talking about exists already, has been done to a certain extent, and these are the images I chose to help. I think they're quite exciting, you know, for someone to look at, and it relieves the boredom of reading through all these applications. So I think I'm probably over time, but anyway, so good luck with your applications and any questions. This is just an example here. My topic, my fellowship was my project was called Ocean of the Unseen Spaces of Extended Urbanization in the North Sea. And there's one of my, let's say, deliverables, a GIS-based map of what's going on in the North Sea in terms of occupation, urbanization, industrialization. So yes, thank you. That's enough from me.
Oh, thank you very much, Nancy. That was very interesting and really useful for those who want to apply. And Nishant, I have seen there are a couple of questions in the chat. Would you like to go through them, or some of them are about if we're going to share the recording of the seminar, and we are going to. So this has been recorded, and we will send an email with all the information. Nishant?
Sure, yes. I was momentarily kicked out of the webinar, so I lost the questions, to be honest. But I saw that there was a question particularly for Nancy, which was very interesting, Joaquin. I think it was at the bottom.
Yeah. So I'm reading, one of the questions is, as for the career development plan, is it okay if one of the reasons to apply for the Marie Curie is to obtain a permanent scientist position at a research institute? So
yes, for sure, yeah. Because Marie Curie is also, it's not only an academic program, right? So they're encouraging people even that will go and work in the industry. I think Nishant also explained that at the very beginning, maybe a little bit, but yes, this is something the TU Delft also said to me immediately, look, you know, wherever you want to go, you can go into an academic path after Marie Curie, but you can go into any other kind of something more, let's say industry-based. If you're there, did that answer your question? You can come online.
Yeah, absolutely. And this was the second question for Nancy, if the Marie Curie Fellowship contributed to your career at the end.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this idea of mobility, it does put you into a completely different network. And I mean, it's also highly respected. If you have received a fellowship, everybody knows that that it's very prestigious, basically. So when you apply for your next job and you have this, first of all, on your CV, that's one kind of, let's say, more of an abstract way in which it helps. Then people, then your skills and your ability, I think, to obtain that in the first place and to carry out the research, that's a very strong point. Secondly, it'll put you in touch with a lot of people. And I mean, I wrote in my application that I would be looking for new funding proposals. This is the thing, if you have a two-year Marie Curie, after 6 months, you need to be looking for your next position. You have to be doing that straight away. Time is short, and you know how long this takes. So yeah, I'm still working together with my supervisor, basically long after it's finished. We're putting out a book. And from the kind of the conference that I organized, I came in touch with some really great people too. And the idea was to try and to gather a group and see how we could move forward together. So definitely. And also because it was a prestigious university, people are always very impressed that I had a position there. I'm now teaching. That's something slightly different, but I'm also involved in another research project, yes. And because I had the Marie Curie, I could contribute to different networks because it's 100%. It's 100% position, so you can also be part of other things without, let's say, I have to be careful what I say here, not being paid, but I mean your financial situation is secured, so you have a chance within that framework to go to conferences, to present, to go to workshops, these kind of things. It's all part of it, whereas sometimes it's very difficult to find the finance, you know, to kind of do those kind of things.
Absolutely.
Okay, sorry, that was a long answer. How did you demonstrate in the TOC from you to the host? Transfer, TOC, what's that, sorry?
Table of content.
Transfer of content?
Table of content. TOK.
I'm not sure I understood that as well.
There is another question before that, that was if there is a limit of when you can apply to a Marie Curie. I think there wasn't, right?
There is no limit. Yeah, there is no limit as to when. The limit is for you to have at least 4 years of experience. Afterwards, there is no limit. Of course, you need to understand if you have a break, then there are separate panels. For instance, if you are a European, you want to go back, there is a reintegration panel. If you have a break, there is something called CAR. So of course, there are opportunities of you getting involved in this way, but to precisely answer, there is no limit as to when you can apply after your PhD.
I mean, I would add that one, you know, it's supposed to be, I would say, for sort of junior researchers. So it's a bit unfair of people, why would you apply for a Marie Curie if you have a ton of experience? That seems a bit strange. And as an evaluator, you look at that and you think, is this the right program for you? So it is geared for people it's a stepping stone in your career from your PhD a little bit afterwards to something else. And that's what we're looking for as evaluators in your proposal. There was a question, how does the follow-up work from during and after the scholarship, meeting the proposed milestones? Well, the milestones should be integrated into your proposal during the scholarship time. And when you do your technical report at the end, you will have to explain there how you achieve these milestones. And no one will ask you afterwards. You will not, let me say, in your proposal, you will not add a milestone that's outside the time. Be careful of this, because I evaluated a funny proposal that was talking about things they were going to be doing after the time that I'd actually applied for. That's ridiculous. So there's no milestones outside of the period. So you don't even have to justify that. But you will have to kind of explain where you think this Marie Curie Fellowship will take you later on in your career. Okay, transfer of knowledge. How did I do that? Okay, what kind of transfer of knowledge? Well, I had a kind of a methodology. That's why I put in my presentation. It can be your existing skills or your existing sort of knowledge. I'm saying that because you might come from different fields of science and you have developed sort of some kind of semi-proven theory, or you're working in a more of a different kind of scientific area. Whereas I'm in the humanities, or, you know, cartography, mapping, visuals, things like this, architecture, more aligned to the arts. So I had a kind of a methodology that I used in my PhD, gathering different types of information and making these, making maps. So gathering GIS data and integrating this kind of technical approach with a more ethnographical approach with interviews and other kinds of aspects. So you can use and further methodologies, and you can say that you would bring this methodology to the chair. You can give lectures. You can also kind of conduct seminars or discussions with the PhDs. You can bring your knowledge in different ways, more formalized and more informalized ways into the university like that. Yeah. 7 to 10 years post PhD. It's European money. I don't think it's silly to say, Nishant, you're better to answer this. Is it silly to say you come back to Australia afterwards?
I think there is this European fellowship and there is this global fellowship. When global fellowship is there, it's a requirement for people coming to Australia from Europe to go back to Europe for at least 1 year. However, for European fellowship, it's up to you. If you want to stay in Europe, if you want to come back to Australia, that of course, you cannot say it's silly, to be honest, if you want to come back, because if that is your career progression, if that is something that is progressive in terms of your career and your research, I think it's a fair enough, honest way to express yourself.
I mean, I would just add that you don't even have to say you're going back to Australia. You just, I mean, I wrote, I would like to be in the position to be a PI, principal investigator, because it really annoys me. I've been involved in lots of things where my name doesn't even show up, where I've written the application, but the supervisor's name is on it. So there's no record anywhere that it was actually my work. And I wrote that I wanted to be in this position to be a PI, to be more qualified as a professor, or to acquire other kinds of funding in a more practical sense. So I didn't even say where that would be, you know? I don't think you have to say that, actually, because you can be a little bit more general, more that other opportunities will come to you, whether they're in Europe or whether they're in Australia. It's not necessary to specify that. It's not a geographical thing. It's more a networking, you know, kind of thing, the level. Somebody asked about how many illustrations, how many figures. There's no limit, but you have to, the space is limited. You know, they give you a point, you know, 10 point or 11 point or something like that for the typing. You can see they all look totally squashed. I mean, you know, they give you the because you can't fit much in there, seriously. Half of it is about your supervisor and all sorts of things. A very small part is about your project itself. So, but sometimes a diagram can say 1,000 words. So you have to evaluate whether it's clearer to put a diagram. It's certainly nice for the evaluators. But make sure they've really got the information in there that takes up the space. You'll see that space is an optimum. The application, 7 to 10 years post PhD, appropriate for this call. I don't know, Nishant, what do you think? Depends what you've been doing. Yes,
exactly. What you have been doing since your PhD, that is what matters. I mean, it's really. If you are able to demonstrate that it's a career progression, career development, you should go for it. And we were doing this webinar in the past as well. And interestingly, one of the experts mentioned that even if you have one postdoctoral degree, does not mean that you will not be able to apply for another postdoctoral through MSCA itself. So of course, if the evaluators feel that it is something that is helping you grow, it is helping you have career progress and development, go for it. Of course, because I mean, I'm reading this also with another comment which says, with reference to ERC starting grant. This is something, this is something that we actually, when we present on European funding, I generally present it like a ladder. Okay, with Erasmus Plus coming in, then it comes the Marie Curie ITN, then comes Marie Curie IF, and somewhere closer IF and ERC starting grant. Those are similar type of grant, but of course, I think you have to be careful when you choose IF or starting grant, because they are very similar in terms of your experience. Maybe IF is a little bit lower compared to the starting grant. So you need to understand if it's 7 to 8 years or 10 years, maybe you should go for the ERC starting grant, which, mind you, is not available for this year, is already closed. So you'll have to wait for the next year to come out.
Yeah. The application, the actual process, I submitted my own application, but you have to make sure that you have all the information from the university. So there are certain parts that the university has to fill out. Then they actually have to send them to you and you submit those parts. Or you have a draft online and different people have access for the period, and the university has to fill in certain things. And then you have to, perhaps this is how I think I did it, I closed the application uploading because the part B, where you actually write the project proposal, is a separate document. It's a PDF, and you upload that into the system. So yeah, I wanted to have control of that. I wanted to make sure that, you know, that I got it in on time and so on. So yeah, you can be the one to submit.
Yeah, and one tip regarding that is also the last version that you upload is the one that is being submitted. So you can, of course, upload several versions on the system itself, so that you are not relying on the system on the last hour to, because at times there could be technical problems which you want to avoid, right? So you can submit multiple times. What goes through is the last version that is on the system. I think we'll take one last question, Nancy. There is one interesting question. How much knowledge should you assume from the reviewers?
Yeah, I mean, reviewers, well, I'm one, right? So, they choose me to review applications where my knowledge is relevant, for example. And you've already seen probably that there are 3 reviewers per project. And so I receive some really interesting projects, especially these interdisciplinary ones, but they always have something to do with my field. And so you know that at least the person reviewing has probably already also received a Marie Curie grant. And some of them are more advanced researchers. But let's say, okay, there's a coordinator of the 3 reviewers who will be more advanced, and there's the reviewers. So far I've only been a reviewer, and we don't get paid all that much. So it's in a way it's normal people. I mean, it's researchers, but they do have knowledge of your field and obviously their field. So they're carefully chosen according to that. So how much knowledge? Yeah. I mean, don't underestimate them, obviously. I mean, I think if you are honest about your facts and clear, then this will come through in your application. And even if they're not 100% informed about your field, they can see if it makes sense. You know, they're experienced enough to see if it makes sense what you're proposing. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a very well put answer, Nancy. I think it makes a lot of sense that if there is somebody who has been appointed by the commission, they will have fair enough knowledge to judge on a particular topic. And yeah, I mean, I think it was a very good session, Joaquin. I think we should, considering the time we have used, I think 1 hour 15 minutes has been a fair enough time. And if there are additional questions, of course, we will be more than happy to acknowledge all of the questions, and you can send it in writing to Joaquin, myself, and we'll be able to respond. Of course, Nancy is our guest speaker, so we will not bog her with these questions. We'll be able to answer them. I just see one last question regarding a PhD. The Marie Curie Individual Fellowship is not for PhD. This is for postdocs. The PhD is ITN, which is Innovative Training Networks. You can expect a webinar on ITN on June 18th. We'll keep you in loop, Muswair Navid, and you'll get to understand more on this on that very day. I think that is it from our side, from me and Nancy. Maybe, Nancy, you have a few last words?
Yeah, I mean, I just would encourage you to do it. I mean, I was tossing up between this funding and a very similar mobility. I mean, postdoc is mostly about mobility. You'll have to go somewhere mostly to receive postdoc funding. So, and I was tossing up between this and a Swiss national kind of mobility funding. And the Marie Curie is a much better program because it's well organized and there's all this support. Basically, they want you. Their objective is not to cut you out. The objective is to get you in. So if you fulfill the criteria and if you make a good application, you have great chances, really. And then it will change. It will change things for you, obviously, and especially if you're coming from Australia, New Zealand over to Europe. It's, you know, it's a fantastic way to do it. And I mean, I thought the way, just one thing to be careful of, I thought that the salaries were really good compared to the Swiss program, but you have to look, each university handles salaries in their own way. So although I was in theory receiving, you know, 4,500 euros a month with a family allowance and things like that on the Marie Curie, they have the TU Delft have an agreement with the European Union that they take that money and they give you their own postdoc wage, which is much, much lower. So I got a real fright when I saw that. I thought, how am I going to survive on that, you know? However, costs of living in these places are different also. So it's a great program, and, you know, don't be discouraged. Just think you have to sort of, if that's what you really want, and it'll come through in your application. It really will. So don't be half-hearted about it. Sit down and say, I'm going to write this application and I'm going to, you know, and exactly, if you don't get it, you can try the next year, or your application is good for another application, but give it everything you've got. I mean, don't be half-hearted about it. Yeah. Okay.
That's great and very encouraging, Nancy. Thank you very much.
Great.
So yeah, Nishant, I think we're kind of ready, and yes, I think it has been a very good session. We have all learned a lot about the Marie Curie, and I honestly appreciate a lot the information that you, Nishant, has given, and the experience that we have been told from Nancy. So
perfect. Yes,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much for participating, everyone. And of course, the presentations and the recording will be available. I'm sure we will manage somehow to send it to you and put it on the Euraxess YouTube channel as well, so that if you are unable to join in and if you are hearing us now later on in the future, you're more than welcome to send us any questions.
Thanks.
I just wrote my email address, but I gave it to the wrong person, so I put it in here.
I'm also going to do the same.
Yeah.
So this is my email, and yeah, Nancy and Nishant. All right, thank you very much, everyone. So we'll stay tuned to our communications.
Yes.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much.